Welcome back to another episode of Excuse My Grandma. It's Kim and my co-host,
Grandma Gail.
So this week we are talking all about, is Prince Charming real? Is there soulmates? Is there a one?
Is there fate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you believe in the stars?
Right. So it's baloney. I believe in just being realistic.
I believe it all. If the stars point me in that direction, I will walk.
Okay, Kim.
That's like one of our biggest conversations, I feel like. And we got into it with our guest this week, Hannah Orenstein, who wrote a few novels, one of which we both just read called Meant to Be Mine. And it talks about a girl and her grandma. So we really related to it. But it was interesting because in the conversation, we kind of were talking about this idea of the one and whether or not we feel like they have to be perfect, the person we end up with. But I actually think that a lot of the times we can feel like someone is our soulmate and they're not perfect.
That's correct. I don't think anybody's perfect. I think if you're looking for perfection, Kim, this is going to just be so sad for all your friends and all the young people out there.
Mm-hmm.
There is no such thing as perfection.
Mm-hmm. I think we just all want it to feel special
Right.
and, different than other relationships. And that's what like would differentiate someone from being the one from everybody else.
That's called timing. Timing in life. And the stars are aligned.
Okay, so now we do like the stars.
Well, the stars maybe I like occasionally.
Okay. Okay, well, so we hope you guys enjoy the episode. We are joined by Hannah Orenstein. She's the dating editor of Elite Daily and the author of 4 novels, including her latest that just came out on June 7th, Meant to Be Mine. Hannah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm a huge fan of your podcast.
Thank you. And we got advanced copies of Hannah's book, Grandma and I loved it.
I read it a long time ago. I really enjoyed it.
As soon as you sent it to us, Grandma like read it that day. And I was like, I'm such a procrastinator. And then I couldn't put it down once I actually started.
It was fun.
Oh, thank you.
So let's start with your age, relationship status, and where you're currently living.
Sure. I'm 29. I'm single and I live in Brooklyn.
So how did you first become a writer and like why the romance genre?
So I've always wanted to be a writer. I went to school for journalism. I majored in journalism at NYU. And my dream was to work in magazines as a writer, as an editor. And things seemed like they were going along well. Like I interned at 17 in Elle and Cosmo. And then I graduated and it was like magazines didn't exist anymore in print.
Right.
So the timing was not great. But I wound up at 17.com working as a writer. But before that, I had sort of this weird detour where I briefly worked as a matchmaker for a dating service. And it was fascinating and wild and a total disaster because I had no idea what I was doing. And so while I was at 17, I was writing this book about working as a matchmaker, a novel sort of inspired by my own experiences. And so that came out in 2018. It's sort of a rom-com. There is a romance in it. It's about dating. It's about dating apps. But yeah, ever since then, I've just really enjoyed writing about that subject. I think that we, as a society, can learn a lot about, what we value and what our priorities are by the way that we date and form relationships.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point and why we do the podcast also.
That's our whole podcast, basically.
With matchmaking, what did you learn to be the most important thing when it comes to compatibility?
Honestly, I think it starts with self-awareness. The biggest issue that I ran into over and over again was that people would say, oh, I want XYZ, but they would actually want something entirely different in a partner and they couldn't even identify that. And that's really hard. I mean, it's really hard for anyone to do that. So I don't blame them, but.
Yeah, makes sense. So you said rom-com in a novel. That's the experience that I kind of had reading Meant to Be Mine. And we're really excited also to have you on because it deals with the relationship between a woman and her grandmother, which is also what we do.
Which is good.
But give our listeners an idea of what this novel is about.
Sure. So Meant to Be Mine follows Edie Meyer, who's 29 years old. She is a stylist living in Brooklyn, and she knows the exact day that she is going to meet the love of her life, thanks to a prophecy from her eccentric, fabulous grandmother, Gloria, another Grandma G. And the novel opens on the day that she is going to meet her match, and she boards a plane, but things don't unfold exactly the way that she expects them to.
And it comes to rom-com, I mean, we're all into it, but it's so far-fetched from anything in reality that, we're all vicariously enjoying the perfect match, the perfect setup, the perfect everything. And in reality, there is no perfect anything, which is what you basically say in this little cute novel. It's that you
Well,
have to go along.
This is one thing we always disagree on, like the idea of fate and a soulmate and the one.
You'll be disappointed forever. There's no such thing. You're gonna look from this day to the end of your life, and there's no perfection. It really isn't. You make your perfection. Don't you?
Well, every day you say to me, like, there's no Prince Charming. Do you believe in Prince Charming, Hannah?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I agree with your grandma. I mean, I think that you want to find the best person possible for you, but that doesn't mean they're perfect. You're not perfect. I'm not perfect. It's just, you do the best with what you have. And I think you have to approach it with the mindset that, if you find somebody that you really care about, then you're going to try to make it work. But I also think it's okay to walk away from that if you realize that, making it work isn't going to make you happy.
Right.
But I don't think anyone's out there claiming that the one has to be perfect or that your soulmate has to be perfect.
Well, I think one of the problems with your generation is that you're looking for a lot of perfection, and that really doesn't happen. I mean, maybe you, if Burt Lancaster or Clark Gable had come into your life, you would find that, or who now are your heroes? Brad Pitt. I mean, they're not coming in the door. So if they're not coming in, you have to deal with reality. There are nice guys out there and nice women out there, and if you have somewhat of a compatibility, you enjoy similar things. Doesn't have to be exactly the same. You enjoy doing, like, going to a museum. You enjoy going to theater. You make a life. You make a commitment and say, well, you know what, this could work. Now, if somebody repulses you and you say, oh God, I can't stand them, then of course, but then you walk away. But that really very rarely happens. I think you make your own. What I'm trying to say is you make your own love affair. It's not from a storybook. You have to create it in your own mind. And you do by sharing things with somebody else. And eventually that becomes a relationship, I think. Now, of course, you have a different take on it.
Well, I feel like that would then mean that the stories that we're reading or watching on TV that have those romantic, like, grand gestures and all of those things, that would then mean that it's kind of hurting us, less so helpful. But what do you think, Hannah? Like, do you subscribe to that?
I mean, I'm thinking about this client that I once had when I was working as a matchmaker, and I wrote a fictionalized version of her. I don't know if I can say this legally, but there's a fictionalized version of her in Playing with Matches. And she had a 6-7 page checklist of all of the traits that she was looking for in a partner. It had 33 different potential hobbies that they could share. It had a list of acceptable celebrity lookalikes, unacceptable celebrity lookalikes, full bios and headshots of her ex-boyfriends. It was really,
honestly,
really
I respect that.
Oh no, Kim, this is so silly.
That's like, you know what you want. I don't know.
I mean, she needed the guy to have private plane access, if not his own private plane, then access to a private plane. I mean, the details were,
okay, that's a lot.
double black diamond
That's an awful lot.
Yeah. And so, she was never happy, and I found her amazing guys and she was never happy. And so I think that, if I had found her somebody who had, the top 10 most important traits to her, maybe that could have been enough. I don't know. But yeah, I think you really, I'm not saying settle. I don't that's not what I'm saying at all. Find the person that you love and that you want to share your life with. But I think these rom-coms, and I write them, they are a form of fantasy. It's a form of escapism.
And that's fine. Fantasy is fine. I mean, it's like, that's really what we always had. We had this with Doris Day and Rock Hudson. Those were, even in the 50s when I was growing up, you knew this was ridiculous. You knew that the perfect girl and the perfect guy were not going to meet. I mean,
yeah, but like that feeling you get watching it where you have like butterflies and you're so happy. Like
set up a false sense of expectations.
You want that feeling. You want that feeling. You don't want, I
I
think it's settling for less if you don't take that feeling.
Oh, I think the feeling is really important. I was walking down the street the other day and I saw this guy and his face was so lit up, radiant, glowing. Like he looked like he had just seen the most perfect angelic woman in the world. And he was looking at his girlfriend who was like in sweats and like her hair wasn't done and like she had no makeup and like beautiful girl, but like did not look, done up. And he was looking at her like she was the biggest prize in the world. And I still remember his face and I get like chills thinking about it because he looked so in love. And I think that's the example, right? Like in the rom-com, she would have, had a ball gown on, but instead she was walking around in sweatpants.
Right. It's being realistic. You can be in love with somebody and somebody can be in love with you and not have the fantasy that it's the perfect person. Because if you walk, as Hannah was saying, if you walk on the street, you see everybody is having babies, is walking hand in hand, they're doing their thing, and they're not all having the most ecstatic romance, but in their mind, they're happy with their partner and they're happy in their own self. And that becomes the whole thing. You have to be ready for a relationship and then look for the person who's the best for you.
So I am constantly getting gems of advice from Grandma Gail. I mean, I know your grandparents, Hannah, were a huge source of inspiration, especially for this novel. What was your relationship like with your grandma?
Yeah, so my dad's mom passed away when I was younger, so I just didn't have as much time with her, but she was really inspirational to me. She was this really iconic New York force of nature. And so Gloria does take some inspiration from her. They were both pen pals with the mayor back in the 70s and loved the ballet and the opera. But my mom's parents, they were around up until like 18 months ago. And so, I had a really close relationship with them and they got married in 1958. My grandma was 19 years old. And, I think that, they just said like, everybody was getting married. Like they got married the same weekend that their best friends got married. Like everybody did it all at once. And the advice that they would give me was like, don't do it too fast, like take your time. And that's not to knock their relationship, but I think they encouraged me to not get married at 19 and, really see who was out there.
That was the time, that was it was a different time. I don't think anybody would want their child to get married at, before they've had some experience and had some work experience and had some life experience. I think what I find disturbing is that a whole set of millennials just are pushing the date further and further away because they're looking for something that's not realistic. And that's the issue. Once you're after 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, you have to know what you want. If you don't know by then, you might never know. And then the day could pass and then you will not find anybody because people
wonder where my anxiety comes from.
It's not anxiety. It's not anxiety. I just think that people have to know that timing is in our lives. I mean, I can't have the romance that I had 40 years ago. I mean, it's just not happening. I'm 80 years old. It doesn't work like that. So you're in the prime of your lives, you two girls, but then it moves on and moves on and moves on. And then you can sometimes, and many people do miss it and they don't have anything to really look forward to.
Well, Hannah, as a dating editor, you hear about, I'm sure, a ton of people's stories or they write in and ask questions. Do you get a sense of maybe how the times have changed now versus when our grandmas were growing up, or what you think the biggest difference is?
Yeah, I get a ton of questions from people who are 25, 30 years old saying, I've never had a relationship. Is that normal? Or I've never had sex. Is that normal? I've never been kissed. Is that normal? And I think people, those milestones are being delayed for a lot of different reasons. And, especially for, young kids now, through the pandemic, you're not going to have that boyfriend if you're, sitting in your house by yourself for 2 years. So yeah, I mean, I think that's just very different. I mean, versus getting married at 19 in 1958 to being 19 and, not knowing if those milestones are going to be ahead of you.
Where is your advice of where kind of to meet somebody, or once you do meet somebody, do you feel like we have an issue with commitment a lot? Do you see that kind of amongst people who you speak to?
Yeah. And just to add on to what I said before, is it normal if you haven't had a relationship? You're absolutely fine. There's so many other people in your same boat, so don't sweat it. But no, I think, dating apps are great. I think it's also kind of nice to meet somebody outside a dating app. I once met somebody at Whole Foods and he just came up to me while I was picking out limes and asked what I was making for dinner. And we went out and not my perfect person, you know, the chemistry just really was not there, but I think it felt so special because I was like, oh, like I'm going to pay more attention to him because he was brave enough to approach me
Totally.
in the real world. So I think if you have the guts to do that, challenge yourself to do it, even if it's like once a month. Doesn't have
Would
to
you
be
tell a
multiple.
girl to do that, or do you think just a guy?
Oh yeah, yeah. The weekend before, I did it to a guy at a bar.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but yeah, I think that's more special if you can try to do that.
Yeah, agreed. What do you think, Grandma?
Well, this goes back to her. I think it's a double standard. We've had loads of professionals come on and say the woman should never be the first one to approach a situation, and it doesn't work. The men like to be the chasers, and the women should be the receivers. You know what? I don't know. I think it's very hard for you women today who are professionals, who have careers, to also devote enough time to thinking about your personal life. You tend to blur it, and I don't have any answers for you. I do think that you need to make a little more commitment to the guy who's right in front of you versus the one that might come along 3 years from now. When I got married, perhaps when your grandparents were, we had to make it happen because we didn't have these long-standing relationships prior to getting into our
But what do you mean?
chapter.
Like we make an effort too.
You make an effort, but I don't think we should discuss this. Well, I think Hannah is our specialist. We're really only talking about, from my personal thing is, I think you make an effort, but I think you're very quick to move on. And
you're the only one who would say that about me. Every
We're
one
not
of my
talking about you, aren't we?
You just said you're very quick to move on.
I don't mean
generally you. Maybe
I mean, you're taking this literally. I'm talking about
your everyone in my generation is quick to move on.
I think the millennials don't stick together that long. They hop around a lot, and
first they're like maybe less. They don't monogamous or like stay with the first person like
forever,
right? Like that happens last.
None of this is personal.
Well, you said you, so I was just checking.
I mean, a general you,
yeah,
universal you.
Right.
When you said getting engaged after 6 months, like that just gave me hives. Like the idea of doing that is terrifying.
I know that does. I know it does. And that's just, but that used to be the norm. 3 to 6 months, you would either your parents would say that's enough. You know, how long are you going to hang out together? Or for whatever reason, also the sex was not usually involved in relationships in those years. So you wanted to have sex, you got married.
Do you feel like there's a lot of stories with Jewish female protagonists that's like mainstream and like kind of exploring that family dynamic?
I think there are some. I think the queen of this is Jennifer Weiner. She has a new book out this summer called The Summer Place, and it's about a big, complicated, messy Jewish family. But I mean, aside from her, I think that she was like really the only one doing it really in a mainstream way 20 years ago. And now there are a lot more, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, Rachel Lynn Solomon writes incredible romances with Jewish characters, and sometimes it's subtle and sometimes it's more obvious, but I think her books are fantastic and hilarious and very swoon-worthy.
But the truth is this topic is really for everybody. It has nothing to, I don't think it has anything to do really along religious lines or whatever, or it's as diverse as our country is. Everybody's going through the same issues. So I think really dating and finding someone you can be happy with for your lifetime is really a universal topic now and a universal issue.
For sure.
For sure.
When I was writing this, I was wondering, this is my most Jewish book yet. And I was wondering, like, is this going to turn off readers who aren't Jewish? But then I was talking to other people who have read it, and they're like, oh my God, the family reminded me so much of my Italian family, of my Mexican family. Like every culture really is the same when it comes to valuing family, valuing food. Sometimes parents put pressure on you to find your person. We're all the same.
Yeah. Okay, so I would love to end the conversation with Grandma Gail's old-fashioned dating quiz that we play with all of our guests. So we'll go through some hypotheticals and then deem whether you're more of a traditional dater or more of a modern dater.
Let's do it.
Okay. Number 1 is, would you prefer to get a call or a text from the person you're dating if it's just to say hi?
A text.
Okay. Would you sleep with someone on the first date?
Yes.
Dating apps or setups?
Dating apps.
Move in together before getting engaged or wait until you're engaged to move in?
Oh, I did it first once and never again.
Okay. So like you would want the ring to be on your finger and then you don't feel like you should do the trial run?
I feel like you know enough about a person just from dating them. I
Yeah.
mean, you know how they load the dishwasher, you know what,
Right.
their cleaning habits are. And I think if you move in with them, I mean, it's they get all the benefits of having you as a live-in girlfriend without, any actual
Putting a ring on it.
Making the
Yeah,
commitment.
for
That's
sure.
the story.
Okay. And then should one person pay for every date or should you like split or alternate?
I like it. I mean, maybe this is old fashioned, but I like it when the guy pays in the first date if you're dating a guy. But after that, I think the best thing to do is to alternate.
Okay. Well, 3 out of 5 modern. So you're
Right,
more of a
she's more of a
modern
modern
dater.
dater.
My team.
You girls are sticking together.
Yeah. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for joining us. Tell our listeners where they can get your book and follow you.
Yeah, so Meant to Be Mine is available anywhere books are sold. You can get it in the link in my Instagram bio if that's easy. My Instagram is Hannah Orens, HANNAHORENS.
Okay, hope you guys liked the episode with Hannah. This week for our 1950s movie of the week, we are doing a classic 50s rom-com, Houseboat, 1958 with Cary Grant and Sophia Loren.
And she's so beautiful. You have to really fantasize about having her on your houseboat if you're a guy.
And girls, and guys, feel free to
Cary
fantasize
Grant.
about Cary Grant.
That's
He's
true.
actually the best.
Yeah.
I feel like the most classic, like Hollywood star. Okay, you guys know how to follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Excuse My Grandma. And tell us more episodes that you want to hear from us. If you want more guests, specific guests we can reach out to, or if you want just solo episodes, the two of us. And we will see you next week.